My name is Bernie Roth. I'm a witness to the event known to the world as Kristallnacht, the Night of Broken Glass, or as I prefer to call it, a horrible pogrom. I was born in 1926 and grew up in Vienna, Austria. The year was 1938. I was 12 years old. On November 10th, I was in school. It was a special school just for Jewish kids. 9 months earlier, the Germans took over and separated Jews from regular schools. As a child, I loved to play football. You call it soccer. And you played the game wherever you went. If you saw anything in the street, you'd start kicking it. At lunch in school, you'd take the wrapper from your lunch, wrap it in string, and play makeshift soccer. We would play in a classroom and have a lookout at the door.
Hey, Bernie, want to play? Mr. Strauss is late.
Yeah, sure, we're gonna keep watch.
Hey, Carl, keep watch. And if Mr. Lerman's coming, let us know.
Why do I have to be lookout? Why can't I play?
Oh, it's because you're the best at keeping lookout.
Everyone, stop! Mr. Lerman's coming! Stand up!
Why is Mr. Lerman coming? Where's Mr. Strauss?
Boys, Mr. Strauss won't be coming in today. Guys, we must all get home right away. Mr. Lerman, what's going on?
Did something happen?
There's no time for an explanation. Your parents aren't going to be worried. Now go home right away. Don't stop for any reason. Yes, sir.
The pogrom actually began the night before in Germany, but we were in Austria, so we didn't know about this. On the way home, I saw trucks cruising by. Trucks stopped by the side of the road. The stormtroopers, men in brown shirts, they stopped people and asked if they're Jewish. If they said yes, they took them away. I ran home as fast as I could.
Papa, Mr. Lerman sent all the Jews. What's happening?
It's not safe here, Bernie. Go home.
Why? Please tell me what's going on.
They're making load all our merchandise in the truck. This is the third truck one now. The store's almost empty.
What are the Germans going to do with all the merchandise?
They're confiscating everything of value. They put a sign on the door which says store closed due to price gouging.
But it's a lie. You would never do that.
Listen, Bernie, it's not safe here in Austria for the Jews anymore. It doesn't matter how honest or good we are. Last night, they destroyed all the Jewish shops and synagogues all over Germany.
I'll go check on Monty.
How long have we been here?
I'm not sure, a few hours.
They called me on the way to Shoppers, sent me home to get a toothbrush and begin to scrub.
Same happened to me. Joseph and I have been these election advertisements for almost 3 hours already.
You're great. Stop talking.
I went on a blind date with Cecile and never went out with anyone afterwards. We were married for 56 years. Cecile passed away in 2005. We have 2 children, Cheryl and Jerry, 3 granddaughters, Amy, Lauren, Pamela, and 2 great-grandchildren. I'm very blessed. Years after our children grew up, I went on March of the Living. One of the days, we visited the site of the death camp, Treblinka. In Treblinka, there were no selections like at Auschwitz, no who will live or who will die. At Treblinka, it was straight from the trains to the gas chambers. And all you can see there today are tiny stones bearing the names of all the Jewish communities which were destroyed in the Shoah. On that day of the trip, a bus filled with students on the march suddenly pulled up. The students marched off the bus in silence, carrying a banner which read, Anochi achoti mevakesh, I am here looking for my brother. That pasuk from Parshat Vayeshev, when Yosef is sent by Yaakov to check up on his brothers, said it all. We were all there that day to see for ourselves what happened to our people, Achenu Beit Yisrael, and then return to our homes to teach all the future generations that they must always remember and never forget.
My name is Alex Levy. I was born in 1936 in Berlin. My father, Hugo Levy, was a taxi driver. By the time that I was 2 years old, my parents had already separated. It was the night of November 9th, 1938, the night that would come to be known as Kristallnacht, the night of broken glass. On this terrifying night, my father managed to drive my mother and I out of Berlin. We were dropped off near an inn that was known to be sympathetic to Jews on the run, and was very close to the Belgian border. To the Belgians, the runaway Jews were still Germans, and could just as easily be enemy spies. It was already very late in the evening when my mother and I arrived at the inn, only to discover it was full.
This is as far as I could take you. The hotel here is filled with other refugees waiting to cross the border as well.
Thank you, Hugo. I hope you can escape soon.
Your son needs you in his life.
I will cross as soon as I can. Meanwhile, you and the boy go over to Belgium like we discussed.
Yes, of course, I will.
I've got to go. Goodbye.
Alex, say goodbye to your papa.
Bye, Papa.
Hello? Anyone there?
Coming.
Hello, sir. We need a room for the night.
No vacancy, good night.
Wait, I don't even need a room. A mattress alone is just fine.
There's a mattress in the attic. It's nothing special. $25 for the night.
Perfect, thank you.
Let's find the Jews! Where are the Jews? Where's the clerk? Clerk! Get out! Where are the Jews? Where are the Jews? Where are the Jews? Where are the Jews?
There's no Jews
He's no
here.
help. He's no help.
Get out of here.
Let's go. Find the Jews. Jews! Help! Where are these Jews? Come on! Jews! Come out! I got him! I got him, Heinz! Let's go! I got a Jew! Get out!
Hey!
Get out! Let's go!
Hey, please don't shoot! I'm a rich man! I'll pay you to let me go!
Keep walking! Get out of here! Keep walking! Let's go! Walk straight! I'll beat you! Check that room! Check that room!
Don't shoot, don't shoot.
Where are you guys? Let's go! Open up!
Ah!
I got another one!
Why are you doing this?
I got another
No!
one!
Please, I have a family! Don't hurt us! I don't! Please! No! No! Ah! Stop!
Whoa! Stop! Stupid Jew. Take him to the trucks.
No, Alex, no, come.
I can't imagine what it must have been like to be my mother at that moment, but she did what she had to do, and with me in her arms, she walked across the border into Belgium. We stayed in Brussels for the next 11 years. One day, a letter came ordering old Jews to register with the local authorities. No one in my family was naive enough to register. Everyone knew what it meant. My Aunt Trudy and my Uncle Harry had already been captured in one of the raids, never to be seen again. A friend of the family, Herr Ollendorf, suggested that my cousins and I could be hidden in a Catholic orphanage. Herr Ollendorf assured my mother and aunt that none of us would be baptized or converted. He had Cardinal Van Roy's promise on that. When the war came to an end, I wound up living in Rabbi Bamberger's orphanage for Jewish boys. There, I learned how to be Alex and be a Jew again. Years later, in 1949, my mother decided that we should go to America. We arrived via Canada and traveled to New York City to Grand Central Station, where we waited for our sponsor. It turned out that the family who was supposed to pick us up that day had tragically died in a car accident that morning. My mother and I slowly integrated ourselves into American society. I went to American school, joined the U.S. Army, and became a citizen. I married and have a wonderful family. I am now 84 years old. I am among the youngest Holocaust survivors, and when my generation is gone, so will be gone the eyewitnesses to that most tragic period of Jewish history. I have shared my story with you all, but now you will become the voices of the survivors for the future.
My name is Peter Samoji. I was born in the year 1933 in Pest, Hungary. My city had 4,000 Jews living in it. I had an older sister, Alice, and I have a twin brother, Thomas. We grew up in an observant home. My father owned a prosperous auto parts company, and he was a sales rep for the Ford Motor Company. From 1933 to 1939, we had a loving German nanny who taught us to speak proper German. As a child, I took piano lessons and joined the Boy Scouts. September 1st, 1939 was a very memorable date in the history of the world with the Nazi invasion of Poland. And for our family, it's when Tomas and I started school. A few years later, in May of 1944, the Nazis began to transport the Hungarian Jews to Auschwitz. Between May and July of 1944, over 420,000 people were taken aboard 142 trains to their deaths. I was on one of those trains, along with Tomas, my sister Alice, and my mother.
Mama, what's happening? Where are we going?
Don't worry, children. Everything will be all right.
Don't be scared, Peter. We just have to stick together.
I can't breathe.
It's so hot in here!
Why are they doing this to us?
Where are we going?
Juden, raus! Schnell! Raus!
Mama, do we have any food? I'm starving. Mama, I'm so hungry. Please.
Yeah, Mom, where's the food that you had earlier?
I'm sorry, children. They took the food away from us before we came.
Where are we? What's that awful smell? What's the black smoke coming out of those chimneys?
Peter, stop asking so many questions.
Please, Peter, Alice, Tomas, we have to stick together. We can't be separated.
Do you have twins? Are you perhaps a twin?
Everyone asks, you are only 9, not 11. I hear that they're taking families away if the kids are older. So say you're younger. Do you understand?
Mama, what do you mean? Why would we want to say we're younger?
They're going to take kids away if they're older. We want to stick together, so say you're 9.
Are these your sons?
Yes.
They happen to be twins.
No.
Are you sure about that?
I'm sorry. Yes, I was just nervous.
How old are you boys?
We're 9.
You look too tall to be 9. Take them away.
No! No, please!
No!
Peter!
No,
let
Tomas,
them be with
Mom,
us!
Stay together.
Please, no!
Take care of
Mama!
each
Please
other.
let them be with us!
Be safe.
Don't worry, I'll take care of Mom!
Sadly, that was the last time we ever saw our mama and sister. After the selection, we were taken to a room in a separate area of the camp where we got tattooed. My number was A17454. Tomas was A17455. The man who chose us was Dr. Mengele, the angel of death. All the twins chosen to be experimented on lived in abject fear, wondering when Mengele would decide he didn't need us anymore. We knew that at any moment, at any time, we can go to the gas chamber just like the others. Imagine an 11-year-old thinking, when is my time to die? He put all the males between ages 9 and 16 in one bunk. Luckily, I was able to stay with Tomas.
This is where you'll be sleeping. He will be your commanding officer. He'll be watching over you and will report everything you do to me.
Hey boys, I run this lodger, and I'll be watching over you, so behave yourselves.
When can we see our mother? What about Alice, my sister?
You see that smoke over there? That's where your family is.
After a few years, Papa came to join us in Israel. Tomas and I eventually moved to England to wait for our visas to Canada. We eventually made our way to Canada. It was there where I met my wife Anna, another hidden survivor. We have been together 58 years. In 1970, I moved to the United States, where I became a citizen. My family now includes my children, grandchildren, Tomas's children, and Tomas's grandchildren. In 1982, I received a settlement from the German government as a restitution for my time in the Holocaust as a Mengele twin. I took that money and used it to take my family to Auschwitz. I still have my tattoo to this day. I will never remove it. I keep it as a reminder. Only 4 people from my large family survived. They all went to the gas chambers. All of them. Why did they have to die? We were persecuted only because we were Jewish. Today, there are people who say this never happened. In 10 to 15 years, there will be no survivors. I'm here to tell the world, that it did happen.
My name is Trudy Album. I was born on August 18th, 1929 in Samorin, a small town in Slovakia. In those years in that part of Europe, the borders changed a lot. So when I went to school, our town was actually part of Hungary. After the war, it became Slovakia. There were about 1,100 people all living in this small town: Catholics, Protestants, Jews, and Gypsies. There were 160 Jews, and we had one shul. I was given the name Gertrude, but I was always called Trudy. I had two younger sisters, Hetty and Ilsa. Once the Nazis invaded, at first, all the Jews were forced to wear a yellow star. Then we were taken from our home and forced to live in one tiny room in the ghetto, and then they took to the working commando. And finally, we found ourselves in Auschwitz. I then became known only as A17291. I marched a mile or two after being tattooed to Barracks C2 in the women's camp at Birkenau. We slept 3 to a bed on a plank of wood. No mattress, no pillow, no blanket. If one person turned during the night, we all turned. We were woken up each morning very early for the count. If someone died during the night, we had to wait in our neat rows until that person was accounted for. Then we were given black coffee and a piece of roll made from the hull of the wheat. At night, we had what barely qualified as soup, made from vegetable peels. Eventually, our hunger stopped, but we were always thirsty.
Whoever survives must tell the world what happened here.
The world must know.
Do you think they'll believe us?
Who knows? What day is it?
No idea. Why does it matter? Every day's the same here.
I think it's Friday.
Is it really?
Yeah, I overheard some of the guards talking about taking their girlfriends out for dancing in a fine restaurant.
Fine restaurant?
Dancing. How I miss dancing and music.
And food. Roasted chicken with crispy skin and juicy meat.
My mom would make the best, fluffiest matzo balls and the crystal clear chicken soup.
When I would come home from school on Friday, the whole house smelled like Shabbos. Fresh challahs baking in the oven, a hot sponge cake.
And the potato kugel. Crispy on top and creamy on the inside.
You said it's Friday, right?
Yeah.
I have an idea. Here, help me move this crate over like a table. Now join me. Let's set the table and make our own Shabbos.
Well, we don't have anything.
We have our memories and imaginations. They can't take that away from us.
Oh, here, I have my special white lace tablecloth.
Here, I have these candles.
I'll finish the cooking. The soup is almost ready. Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu v'tov v'tzivanu halik ner shal Shabbat.
Here, I'll make Kiddush.
I never lost faith in Hashem. I truly believed that my family and I would be reunited after the war. I would say Moda Ani each morning and Shema at night. I imagined my family was alive and struggling to survive like me. I imagined that we would all get back together when this war was finally over. That hope sustained me. A short time later, I was sent to Plazau, where I was put to work again. After liberation, I was eventually able to emigrate to America, where I met Louis Album, the man who would become my husband. We married a short time later, moved to Jamaica, Queens, created a kosher Shomer Shabbos household, and had 3 children and 7 grandchildren. I never wanted to talk about my experiences during the Holocaust until I read an article by Elie Wiesel, who said the last survivor would bury a living witness. After that, I decided to tell my story. It was very hard at first, but then it got easier. I want young people to know what hatred can create. I went with my granddaughter on the March of the Living and volunteer for other Holocaust education programs where I speak to students and tell them my story. I urge them to be proud of who they are and accept others for who they are, without judging them. Looking back, I had many years of happiness with Lou, and now I have great happiness with my children Irene, Glenn, Leah, and Keith, and my grandchildren Erica, Hannah, Logan, Sam, Zoe, Ray, and Max. In many ways, their love helps me ease the pain of those horrible years in my past. Remember, it's a beautiful world out there. It's the people who can make it ugly. So try to make it a good life.
My name is Sam Weinreich. I was born on September 3rd, 1919. I was 20 years old when the war started. I lived in Lodz, Poland, which is sandwiched between Russia and Germany. It had the second largest Jewish population in Poland. I lived 6 years under Nazi rule. I had 4 brothers and 4 sisters. The Nazis killed all of them, as well as my parents. I am the only survivor. My father owned an antique shop. All of my married siblings and their spouses worked in the furniture business. Each one owned their own store in which they sold new and used furniture, crystal, figurines, and other such things. We all attended school until the age of 14. And then we learned a trade in order to be prepared for life as an adult. Then the Nazis invaded Poland, and our lives were torn apart. I survived the horrible life in Lodz ghetto, being deported to Auschwitz, being starved and worked almost to death, and even typhus. Finally, in 1945, the war was almost over. Only we did not know this yet. One day, that spring, we were told to grab a blanket and forced onto a train. In the back were cattle cars with open tops. I was in a cattle car. A short while later, after the train left, the rails were bombed and the train stopped. There was an announcement and everyone, front and back cars, were told to get off the train. We all jumped out. I noticed there was a forest in the distance. I knew that was my chance. I saw a younger boy on the train and told him to come with me into the forest.
Stay down. We have to hide. They'll be coming to look for us.
I'm scared.
Don't worry, we have to stay put. It's our chance to escape.
What if they find us?
Everyone must return to the train immediately. I repeat, all Jews return to the train immediately.
I think I just heard them. I think we need to go back.
I'm not going back and neither are you.
Where are we gonna go?
Don't worry. I'll protect you. You're cold. You're shivering. Here, take my blanket.
I think I'm gonna die here, please. My parents are from Lodz. If you see them, tell them where I died.
No, you survived this much. Come with me.
What is that uniform?
I don't know. All I know is that's not German. Maybe we should approach them. They can help us.
What if they're the enemy?
Hey, who's there? Hey, Patterson. I see 2 men over there. They look like they're civilians.
Those are prisoners. They must have escaped one of those trains.
They will help us. Come with me.
They need help. Patterson, see if we have any sea rations left. They're hungry.
I'll get them something. I'll see what I have.
I'm Sergeant Fleming. I'm from the U.S. Army. We're here to liberate you. You're safe.
I have this can. I think maybe peas.
What's going on out here?
Chaplain, come. These men need help.
Yidden, they're my people. The people who've come to liberate. Come, hear mich und say jetzt frei.
Dank.
Grüße Dank.
Why do they look so scared?
They thought we were trying to harm them. We can't feed them this. We have to bring them to the hospital and feed them milk and farina. Come. Kim jetzt mit mir.
Dunk.
After many weeks of being slowly nursed back to health, I finally felt like myself again. I then went to live in a displaced persons camp in Landsberg, Germany. The camp functioned like a small city and had its own police, government, and even a theater. I worked there as part of the sanitation police. I also performed in several plays while I lived there. In 1946, walking down a street one day in the DP camp, I noticed a beautiful girl, and I said to myself, I'm going to marry that girl. As it turned out, that girl, Frida Gola, was from my town in Poland, and she too was the sole survivor of her family, like me. We married on September 3rd, 1946. On May 9th, 1949, we arrived in the United States. At first, the United States weren't taking many Jews. Eventually, they took us. We moved to Memphis, Tennessee because there were many furniture factories there where I could be able to find work, since I was a furniture finisher. We built a very nice life for ourselves in Memphis and raised our family of 3 daughters and 2 sons there. Every survivor has his own story about what happened to him, all the events through different eyes. Whatever. I know historians will probably come up with other stories, but nobody can deny what these eyes have seen. It's unbelievable what one human can do to the other. People became animals and tore us apart for no reason, only because we were Jews. My message for the future generation is, people should eradicate hate towards other people who are different from themselves. No more hate. Then, there won't be any more wars.
My name is Fred Turner. I was born in Vienna, 1923, and my brother Thomas was born 2 years later. We grew up in a typical Prague family, educated, middle-class, Jewish people. Our father had a doctorate from the University of Prague and was in the insurance business. Our mother was from Vienna and spoke to us in German. We were far from wealthy, but we were comfortable. Life was good before the war. There was no overt anti-Semitism. We went to school in Prague, and these public schools were very, very good, with many Jewish teachers. At least 1/4 of the students in my class were Jewish back then. Before the war, our Jewish community numbered 30,000 members, many of whom were writers, composers, many active artists. We went to shul for high holidays, but we're mostly a secular family. In Prague, there weren't divisions of Judaism back then. Some observed more, others less. I was 16 when the war began, in September 1939. On March 15th, 1939, the Nazis marched into Prague. At that moment, all of the laws of Nazi Germany applied to the Jews of Bohemia. One day I was in school. The next day, an edict was put out, no more Jews in school. I was kicked out of school. My father lost his business. My formal education ended at age 16. My family tried several times to leave the country. The Germans made sure that it was nearly impossible. Any Jew who wanted to leave needed to obtain both an exit permit and a visa to a specific destination. No one wanted to take in Jews back then, so my father had arranged for us to be in hiding from 1939 to 1941, until I was betrayed by some non-Jewish neighbors. It sent me off to my first camp, Lipa. It was a labor camp, mainly farm work, and it was run by the Gestapo of Prague. By March of 1943, I was 20 years old, and orders came to send all 300 of us to Theresen. I was in the Hunderschaft, the group of 100. We didn't have an assigned place of work, but we were sent to do whatever work was needed. Fixing the roof, digging a ditch, plumbing, painting, this and that. The best part of the job was being able to be outside after curfew. We had a special permit that was supposed to go for a specific job after 8 p.m. I used it all the time to attend lectures and go wherever I wanted with some common sense. I always had a screwdriver with me in case someone stopped me.
See, Yassel, I told you it'd work.
Yeah, who knew that carrying out screwdrivers would allow us to go, move freely?
Stick with me, Yassel, and you'll be in good hands.
Fred, I heard talk that there's going to be some Red Cross visiting tomorrow. Do you know anything about that?
Yeah, I heard the Germans are having some representatives from Red Cross coming over.
But why? Are they going to have some event to honor them?
Yeah, I heard they're trying to the German Reich is pulling a publicity stunt to try and make themselves not seem as bad as everyone thinks they are. Not really fix up the windows in the whole walking tour.
Well, if it's not as bad as they say, then why are people starving?
I heard they're having representatives from Swiss, Danish, and German representatives.
Oh, what a joke. The German's just gonna be another Nazi. The Swiss, a Nazi sympathizer. And the Dane, he knows better than to speak up against the Nazis.
There's nothing we could do. It's just another German Third Reich publicity stunt.
Jews, go, move, move, keep moving. Right here.
Fred, is that
you,
you,
old man?
It's been so
Stop.
long since I've
Papa,
seen you.
I'll show you where you stand.
Please.
Keep moving. Let's go. Keep moving. Keep moving.
Oh, Fred, thank God it's all
Papa.
it's you. Are you all right?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. Don't worry about me. Just take care of yourself. That's all that matters.
I will. You take care of yourself too, Papa. Till we see again.
Till we see again.
Bye.
Soon after that, I was shipped to Auschwitz myself. It was fall of 1944. Aside from a handful of people, most of the prisoners in my transport were sent immediately to the gas chambers. My father's transport was no different. Upon arrival in Auschwitz, anybody who was elderly or sickly was sent immediately into the gas. My brother was sent to Treblinka in 1942. He was on a transport where there were no survivors at all. We were finally liberated April 27, 1945. I weighed about 70-odd pounds. I was one of those shuffling skeletons you've seen in pictures. I consider myself a happy person, with a wonderful wife, a promising son, a community I'm comfortable in, and as an artist, I have a job that I love and have been quite successful with. Nevertheless, I am aware of being a Holocaust survivor every single day of my life. It lives inside me. I want you all to remember one thing. Talk to your children and tell them that you talked to a survivor. I want you to remember you are a repository of memory for me.